probably my very first memory is when my husband and I were sitting at the dining room table with the 3 children. I have another son. And I said, Dad, shall we tell them the news? And the kids all looked up, and I says, we're going to have another baby. And it was Mark. And there had been 7 years at least since Pam was my youngest. And so everybody was pretty excited, needless to say. Anyway, Mark was born on December the 5th in 1971. He was 2 months early, so he weighed just a little over, I think he weighed 3'9", and he grew up to be over 6 foot tall. And he was, we all loved him to death. We were also excited to have him, and we were also proud of him. And from the time he was just a really little kid, he wanted to be a fireman. I think his birthday cake, when he was just a few years old, he wanted a fire truck, and my sister-in-law made a fire truck birthday cake for him. And then his dad was a volunteer fireman, so we have a picture of Mark before he was at school. He was maybe 4 or 5 years old with his dad's helmet and jacket on. And he was a Boy Scout and an Eagle Scout, and then he joined the Explorer group for the fire department. And he was about 16 then. He said the kids, the teenage friends, kind of teased him about it a little bit, but he had a goal in mind, and he was determined to be a firefighter. And so he was an explorer, and as soon as he was old enough, he was a volunteer. And then he was the youngest person that was ever hired for the Overland Park Fire Department. So he was really proud of that, and we were very proud of him. And he was, on his days off from the fire department, he was a policeman for a neighboring city. And he loved both jobs, but I think they all appreciated his common sense that he had in certain situations.
I have a lot of memories that I cherish of Mark. Some of them are painful, and then there are some of them that are hysterical. I remember 2 specific hugs that we ever shared in our lifetime. As a family, we left for the day, and he was at home with my oldest brother, and they were horsing around, and he split his head open. And when we arrived at the house, I was probably about 10 years old then, maybe 9, and we had to take him to the emergency room for stitches. And my mother and father were there, and we asked him, who do you want to hold you? And he picked me. So I picked him up, and he was, just a couple years old then. And I can still remember the feeling of his arms and legs wrapped all the way around me as tight as they could all the way to the hospital. And just like it happened yesterday. And then when my father passed away, and we all grabbed hold of one another, I can remember the feel of his arms around me. And then there are comical things. He was extremely animated, and everything was down to where the food was on his plate, and I'm supposedly that way myself as well, I've been told. But I remember one ride that we were looking at homes because he was supposed to build his house next to mine on some acreage. And so we would all spend our weekends, him and his girlfriend and my husband and I wanted to look at houses. And we just finished, and we got on the highway, and we're going on the on-ramp, and the sunroof was open. And all I heard was this scream from the back seat, this, "Oh my God!" In his voice, I'll never forget it. And he's screaming this over and over, and I think, what has happened? And the reason I didn't get scared was because his girlfriend was laughing hysterically. And what had happened was there was a bird that had gone to the bathroom right above the car, and it had come right in through the sunroof and landed on his shirt. And he was such a germaphobe And we had to drive directly to his apartment so he could shower from head to toe. You know, taking his shirt off was just not enough. And, you know, it was things like that about him that were, you know, funny, that were specific to him. He was very organized, and, you know, if he wanted to get a new apartment, he had a 3-ring binder of every apartment in the area with every amenity, dishwasher, you know, pool, covered parking, you know, how far it was from the firehouse, you know, etc. So he was very entertaining.
But I do remember 2 instances where our neighbor's house caught fire, and it was a pretty big fire, and Mark was there just like that at our house, because he heard the address on the radio, and he knew that we lived on Nelson Circle, and he was there so fast to make sure that it wasn't us and everything was okay, and, you know, he was right there. And then another time I remember, my sons are in Scouts, and he gave a demonstration at the fire station. We took this they were young, 7, 8-year-old boys, for what to do in case of a fire. And I'll never forget it. He literally put on his entire garb, oxygen tank, hat, helmet, everything, turned off all the lights in the room. We were in the bunk area where the guys sleep. He turned off all the lights, and all these little kids were just sitting in there. And he crawled in on the floor on his hands and knees. And he said, and he had his backpack going, you could hear his voice in the oxygen. And he said, this is what we look like when we come into your bedroom. So don't be afraid that we're not going to come through the door standing up. We're going to come crawling on the floor, because that's the only way that we can see. And that will always stick with me. And the boys got it. I mean, they were able to see that this is really what happens. And I was really, really impressed. And to this day, they're both in their 20s now, but some of the parents still comment on how Mark did that for the Scouts. And I think he really loved firefighting. You could tell. He never talked about any of the calls. He never broke any confidentiality that I ever was aware of. He took it very seriously. And that's what I remember most. I wish that I could go back and see his teenage years, but it is what it is. That's what I remember the most.
Well, there is a scholarship in his name that's is for the explorers at the fire department at that station, and that we just attended one of their services. I guess you'd call it a little service.
Ceremony.
Just a little ceremony just several weeks ago, and a scholarship was given to a young man. And there was also another award. What do they call it? An excellence. How did they word that? Some award that is not given at any particular time annually, or it's just whenever they see a person who shows
Great honor.
Love for the work that they're doing, I guess, and who exemplifies what Mark stood for, and more or less. And someone did receive that award just a few weeks ago.
You know, being that he was so much younger than we were when he was born, and we took care of him from a baby on. I don't have any children myself. You feel like you not only lost a brother, but that you lost a child.
Yeah.
You know, because you did so much nurturing yourself to him at that age. So.
But he went the way he wanted, loved what he, that's what he told Mom once. Anything happens to me, it's while I'm, firefighting, it's the way I want to go.
Yeah.
And it was peaceful too, nothing happened, so.
Well, he said if I die at the firehouse or the police department, just remember, I loved what I was doing. I loved my job.
Yeah.
I loved every minute of it. So